Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pun, and I'd like to ask you one question. What do you see here? For most of you, what you see here is a hand, maybe some fingers, or an arm. But for millions of disabled people worldwide, what they see here is an opportunity. An opportunity to do unimaginable things. An opportunity to complete unimaginable tasks. And an opportunity to have an unimaginable life. The hands, as most of us can agree, is one of the most vital organs in our body. And without it, life would be harder tenfold. You would be able to eat, drink, write, or even bike without any difficulty. So for those who are disabled, they can turn to prosthetics to maximize what is remaining of their limb and allow them from originally being disabled to becoming enabled. However, according to the World Health Organization, there are currently 40 million amputees in developing countries, while only 5% have access to proper prosthetics and health care. So why is it that the remaining 95% are not allowed such life-changing devices? Why is it that the remaining 95% are denied access to such a basic human feature? Well, it all comes down to price. Traditional prosthetics are made by a method called injection molding, a very expensive method used in mass production. According to ICOmold.com, a website specializing in injection molding, one injection mold may cost around $3,000 to $6,000 to make, meaning that it's an additional $3,000 to $6,000 for each custom prosthetic, making a prosthetic arm a very low cost of $3,000 or more. Essentially, for those earning minimum wage in Thailand of around 354 baht a day, we need to work months to years just to purchase one prosthetic. They will need to work months to years just to have access to such a basic human feature. And they will need to work months to years just to hold one cup of water. Essentially, for those in the low-income groups, it is nearly impossible for them to purchase a prosthetic. It is much more impossible in other countries where the minimum wage is much lower than this. So now, how do we solve this problem? How do we turn this impossible into possible? Recently, there's been one method that tops all: 3D printing. 3D printing is the process of turning a three-dimensional digital object into a physical object in real life, with one of these machines behind me, which a decent one can cost around $100 to $300 or a little bit more. And all you need to do is go online and find a model, or you can create one on your own, slicing it, which is to convert it into commands for the 3D printer, and then printing it. For example, if you're interested in model rockets, from a digital file like this, you can create something like this. Now, if you're interested in Pokemon and steroids, from a digital file like this, you can create something like this. I mean, these two objects are quite cool, right? But especially this one. But what if you're interested in something else? What if you're interested in enablement? From a digital file like this, you can make something like this. This is a 3D printed prosthetic hand called the Phoenix hand, made by the eNabled organization, an organization which aims to create affordable 3D printed prosthetics. This hand is fitted on those who do not have a full working hand, but a working wrist, allowing them to grab onto objects just with the motion of their wrist. For example, if I wanted to drink this bottle of water right here, by turning my wrist, I could. And imagine if there was a bike in front of me and I wanted to ride it and hold on to the handlebars. By turning my wrist, I could. Now with 3D printing, you can also create prosthetics that are much smaller and are much bigger to fit the needs of anyone, whether a child or an adult. For example, this tiny prosthetic right here may be best fitted for a small child or a toddler. While this huge one may be best fitted for a bodybuilder like this Pikachu. And with 3D printing, you can also solve one major issue with traditional prosthetics, that is the weight. In a recent visit to Siruntuan Hospital, Dr. Brayasut, a psychologist working with 3D printed prosthetics, told me that the problem with traditional prosthetics are that they're heavy and patients will tend to stop using them just because they're too straining to use. Fortunately, with 3D printing, you can control the density, or what we call the infill, meaning that while an object is not 100% solid, the structures inside it make it strong while being very lightweight. For example, this 3D printed hand right here has an infill of around 20%, and it is quite strong, while also very lightweight at 160 grams. So now, let's guess how much this costs. Please raise your hand if you think this costs $9,000. Now raise your hand if you think this costs $90. Now raise your hand if you think this costs $9. Well, if you guessed $9, then you're absolutely correct. This prosthetic cost me $9 in materials to make. When compared to the original $3,000 prosthetic, this $9 prosthetic is a 99.7% decrease in price. It also means that while one $3,000 prosthetic can enable just one life, one $3,000 investment in 3D printed prosthetics can enable up to 333 lives. One of these lives, similar to that of Jacob Taggart, a 7-year-old boy born with only a portion of his thumb and first finger, was enabled with a 3D printed hand, allowing him to write with his dominant hand and chase his dreams of playing baseball. In Thailand, there's an organization called TEDxYouth, an organization that has enabled over 170 people with 3D printed prosthetics and tools. One of them, a girl named Pai. She was born without her forearm, but with 3D printed tools, she's now able to eat with 2 utensils, bike, write, and even play the ukulele. Personally, I've recently started working with this organization, and I've been experimenting with some 3D printed prosthetics by myself. In the UK, there's a girl named Isabella who is also missing her forearm, and was enabled with a 3D printed arm made by Stephen Davies, a disabled person himself. Since Isabella does not have a working wrist, this prosthetic arm allows her to grab onto objects just with the motion of her elbow. Furthermore, a company called Limber, founded by 2 UC San Diego alumni, has started to create and donate 3D printed legs for those affected by the conflict in Ukraine. Now, not only do 3D printing help humans, but animals as well. Here on the left, you can see an injured eagle missing her top beak. With 3D printing technology, researchers were able to recreate and reattach her beak, restoring her to her full glory. While worldwide, there are many dogs that are being enabled through various types of 3D printed limbs. As you can see, the power of 3D printing is immense. From humans to even animals, 3D printing allows those who are disabled to become enabled at a very, very low cost. And in the future, as 3D printing continues to develop and become more widespread, there's no doubt in my mind that we will be able to enable everyone. So, as an end to my TED Talk, I'd like to rewind to the first question I asked you. Now, I'd like you to think, maybe to ponder a little bit. There's no right answer, and there is no wrong. So when you look at this 3D printed prosthetic hand, what do you see here? Thank you.